Welcome to the podcast that will teach you how to successfully invest in and build steady streams of passive income from the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Veteran real estate investors Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart from Mobile Home Park Academy will personally share with you the valuable lessons they've learned along their journey as mobile home park investors, so that you too can learn how to build massive cash flow and huge profits from this extremely lucrative niche. So without further ado, let's welcome your hosts for today's show, Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart.
Welcome, guys and gals, to the Mobile Home Park Academy's weekly podcast. We'll provide all the information that you need to know to successfully locate, negotiate, close on, and make huge profits from the lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. I'm your host, Kevin Bupp, along with my co-host and business partner, Charles Dehart. And today's show, guys, we're going to be sharing the stage with two mobile home park investors who are fairly new to the business, being that they bought their very first park less than 1 year ago today, but who are absolutely crushing it and have acquired 3 parks to date, totaling 652 rentable lots. These two rock stars go by the name of Ryan Narus and Ian Tudor and are based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And today we're going to dig deep into their business and learn how they went from struggling new investors to owning a portfolio worth in excess of $13 million in literally less than a year. It's crazy. So before we dig into Ryan and Ian's story, I'd like to go through a few updates with you guys real quick. First and foremost, if you've been listening in for the past couple of weeks, then you'll know that we've been setting some huge lofty goals over here at Sunrise Capital Investors, which is our investment arm of our business. And we're in growth mode now. We're acquiring a lot of parks, raising a lot of capital, but the reason why I tell you this is we can't do it alone, guys. We can't do it alone. We'd like to acquire 10,000 rentable lots in the next 5 years, and we are looking to bring on basically talented staff. We're looking to bring on talented individuals that want to work alongside us, want to work with us, grow into our team, and build something that's very special together. So we have created an apprenticeship program that we're going to be rolling out. I thought we'd be rolling it out last week, but it should be coming out this week. Keep an eye on our website, sunrisecapitalinvestors.com, and just keep an ear open to this podcast as well. We'll let you know as soon as it rolls out, but we want you. If you're someone that wants to get into this business, you're sharp, you're hungry, and you're a hustler, we want to talk to you because we'd love to potentially bring you on our team and have you help us grow our business and make it a win-win relationship for everyone involved. So again, keep your eyes and ears open about this apprenticeship program that we're creating here. It should be rolled out here in the next week or so. Next up, guys, if you're an accredited investor and you're looking for passive income and you like this investment niche, I'm assuming that you probably you like it a little bit, this investment niche, mobile home park investing, if you're actually listening to the show. And so if you have an interest in this niche and you have an interest in placing some capital and getting some good return on your money with a proven team that has a proven track record, then you need to check out our opportunity by going to sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. We're currently looking for partners that want to grow with us, with our team. We currently have 6 parks in contract today, and we'd love to work with you. We'd love to chat with you about our opportunity. So again, you can learn more about that by going to sunrisecapitalinvestors.com, or you can call us directly at 888-260-9455. And lastly, guys, we're based in Clearwater, Florida, so we're in the Tampa Bay area. Charles and I love meeting others that share a passion for this business or just real estate investing in general. So if you find yourself in the Tampa Bay area, whether it's for work or pleasure, and you have some free time, please look us up. You can shoot me an email directly. Actually, Charles and I email directly, mobilehomeparkacademy@gmail.com. And we'll try to coordinate our schedules and get together while you're in town. So, guys, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ryan Narus and Ian Tudor to the show. Guys, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys are going crazy right now, right? I mean, you guys are buying up a frenzy, and I'm excited to dig into it. You guys have made a lot happen in such a short period of time. And Charles, do I have you here yet? Charles, you here with us?
Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. So Charles, what I really like to do with Ryan and Ian today is I really want to dig into kind of their background, how they got into this business, because I know, Charles, you probably spoke with them the first time about 2 years ago when they were just trying to get into this business, try to crack into it, try to leave the corporate rat race. And I know, I believe it was I'm probably going to mix the two up, Ryan and Ian. One of you guys were just finishing up school. The other one was working in the corporate field, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong. And you guys were just you're young and hungry and looking to make things happen. And that was just a few short years ago. And literally in the past year, you guys have bought 3 parks totaling over 650 lots, and they're just on fire. So if you would, each one of you, if you could just maybe take a few minutes apiece before we really dive into the meat and potatoes, and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of, what you did prior to mobile home park investing, and then, what got you interested in the niche, and then, kind of what brought you up to speed where you are today. And if you would, when you actually give an answer, when you speak, maybe if you could just say who you are, that way we'll know who's actually talking.
Yeah, I'll go first. This is Ryan Narus here. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for having us. It's a complete honor to be here. I haven't missed a podcast, and I have so much to thank y'all for, because we learned especially a lot in the beginning from y'all. And so, in so many words, we're Kevin and Charles' disciples. So thank you guys
I don't know
for having us.
Yeah, Charles, I think that's I don't know if that's cool or creepy, disciples, that word. But thank you guys. We really appreciate it, man. That's awesome. You guys are kicking ass.
I don't expect you to remember this, Kevin, but you and I
do remember.
One of the
phone
calls way early on, and met Charles for lunch while I was at Wake Forest getting my MBA. Yeah, you guys have just been a great help to us, so we really owe you all a lot. So we're happy to give back in any way we can. But let me just give a quick overview of who I am. I was undergrad psychology major at Wake Forest University. Then I went into a career in sales, won a couple of awards. Then I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, realized that sales would not give me the lifestyle that I wanted. Then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I realized that real estate and passive investment was probably the way to go. But I still didn't have any idea what that would be or what that would look like. So I realized sales wasn't the answer. I went back to Wake Forest University to get my MBA. I concentrated in business analytics statistics, secondary concentration in operations and marketing, so quite literally everything but finance. So that was a big hole in my game. Met Ian Tudor, we met during childhood. We were childhood friends, but reconnected while I was down in Miami, and he was in Orlando during my internship. And we both quickly realized we have a huge passion for reading books, and we would be great business partners. And we just decided, hey, look, we're going to be in business together in some way, shape, or form. We both have that entrepreneurial spirit. What should we do? And very quickly, Ian was like, hey, what do you think about mobile home parks? And I was like, all I know about mobile home parks is the show Trailer Park Boys, which I'm totally obsessed with. So I was like, yeah, let's take a look at it. He showed me the financials, showed me Frank and Dave, quickly read through all the materials, and I was sold. So that was about 2 years ago, and graduated with my MBA, went to work for Wells Fargo for about a year in capital markets operations. So tried to cover up the financial hole in my game, so to speak, and operations. And then just once a day, every day, do a little bit of mobile home park work. And eventually, boom, here we are, 3 parks purchased rather. And I got to say thank you to Wells Fargo and the corporate life. And now I'm literally down in Atlanta, Georgia right now, being a physical property manager on one of the parks that we own, which actually is about a mile away from one of y'all's parks, which I got a chance to go drive through and speak to the mayor and some of the city council folks about it. And they have lots of good things to say about y'all. Apparently y'all did an outstanding job turning that one around. So yeah, so that's me. Ian, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So I'm Ian Tudor. Basically, kind of my background, Ryan kind of, gave a good overview of how we met and how we started our business. So I graduated from Virginia Tech in finance. Finance was kind of my passion. I worked for an insurance company it was a financial development role. I didn't quite click there. However, I did meet a mentor there that opened my eyes to real estate. So I bought my first house when I was at 23 years old, rented it out to a few people, lived rent-free for a little bit. I realized that real estate was something that I was really passionate about. So I connected with the people that I knew. I landed a job in Orlando working for a Class A office REIT, which is kind of like the big boys in my mind, I thought I knew a little bit about real estate because I bought a house, and I was pleasantly surprised that there's a lot to real estate when it comes to institutional capital, and realizing just the amount of analysis and valuation that went there. So I learned a huge amount in about 2.5 years there. And then in terms of getting into mobile home parks, after I bought my first house at 23, I wanted to look a little bit deeper to see if I could have some other passive income. So I looked around in Orlando for some more houses. For whatever reason, I couldn't find a deal that really made sense to me. I looked at flipping houses, almost did 1 or 2 of those. Then I started looking at mobile homes then my roommate at the time was like, why don't you buy the whole park? And I never really considered that. I looked a little deeper. We tried to launch a venture with my old roommate at the time. It didn't quite work out for various reasons, and then I revisited it with Ryan. And so here we are today, 2 years later, rocking and rolling, and hopefully going to add a few more parks this year.
That's awesome, guys. And real quick before we move on, you brought up the mayor there in the city of Lovejoy, where you guys just bought your most recent park. And I know what my first impression was when I met that guy. Please tell me your first impression. So, and just so you know, so I can paint a picture for those that are listening, this guy was about 350 pounds, had a handlebar mustache, and he was bald, and he had guns hanging on his office wall, and he had like a stuffed fox. It was the most intimidating meeting I've ever gone into, especially knowing that we were about to buy a park that was across from his office that he hated with a passion. He had been trying to shut down for years. So my first impression of him was like, oh, gosh, this guy's going to make our lives a living hell. And he just looked mean and angry. So tell me your first impression.
Yeah, Kevin, this is Ryan. I think I was going to say in 2 words, power stash.
Yeah.
I think you already took the thunder from that. But so Ian got a chance to meet him first, and told me a little bit about what to expect. And that's still, even if you know what to expect from this guy, it still catches you off guard. So I was with one of the councilwomen, and she goes, oh, look, there's the mayor's car, because we were at City Hall. And out of nowhere, this dude in his giant Suburban comes in, parks illegally, but it's okay because he's the mayor, right? It takes up like 2 or 3 spots, jumps out of the car. He's big, tall guy, too. Bald, serious Civil War mustache, arms crossed, and he just goes, I'm buying a couple trailers in your park. And I was just like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I've had very similar experiences. It's one of those things, I mean, you guys kind of touched on all of it, but he definitely is intimidating at first, and when we first sat down in his office, he was kind of like, impress me. That was the vibe I got from him. It's like, what are you guys going to do for me in Lovejoy? And then once you get to know him, he's actually a really friendly, nice guy, and really willing to help where he is once you get to know him. But after that first impression, he is kind of like a gunslinger, it feels like. But all in all, it's been a great relationship so far.
Yeah. It's I don't want to talk about this too much. We can move on here, but our first meeting, he basically sat down the chief of police, the code enforcement officer, and a few of the other staff members, and he said, if you guys buy that park, you're going to be wasting your money because I've been trying to shut that down for years. And if you buy it, I'm going to work even harder to shut it down. I said, oh, gosh. Okay, well, fair enough. We'll prove you wrong, but just give us time. And we did. And he's really happy now. So it was an interesting scenario and interaction with that dude. But yeah, Bobby's a good guy. So Ian, I want to talk to you. I mean, you're the one that kind of introduced Ryan to mobile home parks, and you talked a little bit about kind of how you were introduced to the niche by, I guess your old roommate kind of said, hey, why mobile homes? Why not mobile home parks? But I'm sure you probably looked at other types of investments as well. I mean, when you started thinking mobile home parks in a bigger scale, I mean, did you go down the road of looking at other types of commercial real estate, apartment buildings or self-storage or anything else? And if so, why'd you end up landing back on mobile home parks?
Yeah, so I was probably 24, 25 at the time when I started to look into that. And that's a great question. So I just remember I was looking for passive income, and that was about the time where I had this giant AC issue at my single family home, which pretty much wiped out cash flow for like three or 4 months. I forgot how much it was. Oof. But it was a painful enough experience that I realized that scale was important in real estate, because at that point in time, I was, things were going quite well. And then I was thinking if this continues to happen, if you have this a couple times a year, then you're just going to continuously have negative cash flow months, which wasn't obviously the point of getting into it. So once I started looking into mobile home park, it stuck pretty hard. Once I started looking at it, I bought the informational packet from Frank and Dave. I read into it quite a bit, and it just made a lot of sense at that point in time. So I didn't look at other forms of real estate. Ryan and I have looked at other forms of real estate since now that we've been in business for about 2 years. However, nothing really comes. I think the supply constraint on mobile home parks and just the fact that it's so hard to move these homes from the lots is just something that other forms of real estate just aren't able to replicate, which makes it very attractive. And also, too, just the fragmentation of the industry. It feels like we're in a really good opportunity to gobble up quite a few of these and really get some scale, whereas maybe apartments or self-storage, which have already had that consolidation, or more so than mobile home parks, it feels like we still have an edge in the mobile home park space that we definitely probably don't have in other forms of real estate.
Yep, and I agree with all those points there. And so I want to talk about you guys' first deal. Everyone kind of gets their foundation, their footing on their first deal. And I know it took you guys, about a year from the time that you really put your feet to the ground to get your first deal done, which is pretty typical. I mean, the deal cycle on these things can be quite long, especially if you're buying off-market stuff. And so maybe speak to, I want to talk about the first deal, some details of it, but more so I want to talk about leading up to that first deal. Like, what kind of activities were you guys putting in motion as far as, talking to brokers, meeting with owners, doing direct mail, cold calling? How did you find that first deal? What did you have to do to get there?
Yeah, so this is Ryan. Let me get us started, and then I'm going to hand the ball off to Ian. So first off, what Ian and I realized pretty early on was that we were going to be pretty capital strapped. I had more student loan debt than I had capital for deals. So I was 28 when we started. I'm 30 now. So we realized we're probably going to have to get creative if we're going to buy a $1.5 million property, right? And we're going to have to find the right people to partner with to make sure we don't get crushed in a bunch of different facets. So step one, however, the value in this industry is, can you find the deals? And not the deals where the mom and pop thinks that their property is worth $100 million when it's a 20-lot pad, right? Finding people who are much closer to market. So we got on the phone with Charles, and we built out our database. We started a mailer campaign. Can't quite boast the numbers that you guys do. Y'all are the Michael Jordan of mailers, but we try hard. And we also hit the phones. My sales background, cold calls, and also brokers. And for whatever reason, Ian really, really resonated with a rock star broker, and they're seriously like buddies. And she brought him our first opportunity. Ian, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So kind of give a little bit more color. In general, in September of 2015, Charles pretty much outlined the database strategy, and then I just dumped hundreds of hours into getting us up to where we needed to be. We hired a VA and things like that. So literally followed your strategy, right? And then started mailing off that, and we probably sent, Ryan, how many mailers have we sent now? Probably over 2,000 or more.
Yeah, well over 2,000.
Right. So we sent over 2,000 mailers, and this is basically a lot of your strategy. I mean, we've adapted some things, but the overall structure is similar things that you've done. Also, too, with brokers, I probably have a list of, 6 or 7 brokers within our footprint, so we're not as geographically diverse as you all. We're more just in the southeast, kind of with driving distance of Charlotte, but it kind of hit them constantly, so they're familiar with who I am. And so I just caught the right person at the right time. I think while a lot of people hear our story and they're thinking, wow, look at all this deal value so early on, a lot of this was just luck and being the right place at the right time and just being consistent with the process. Mm-hmm. And I think that's more important than a dollar value or kind of the number of lots. because opportunities will come to you if you just put in the time, you're consistent, and you just follow through with it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Opportunities are going to come your way because other people aren't willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you are your own broker, right? And that's where we found a lot of the best opportunities. But this first one was calling up a broker, and she was literally about to launch it, and we just connected the two dots with someone else and was able to put in an offer on it right before I hit market.
What do you think positioned your relationship with that broker to where she literally gave you that lead before she plopped it out there to the open world? Because more than likely, at this point in the game, and maybe it wasn't that way a year ago, but it probably was. I mean, it's a good market that park was in. It would have gone for full price, maybe even over what you guys picked it up for. I mean, based on people that are out there with silly money looking to buy, properties and find yield. So what do you think really positioned yourself to have that relationship with her that she handed you basically a pocket listing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've found, so there's more established brokers in the industry who obviously have, really deep lists of people who are in the industry and who they've sold for years and years and sometimes decades. Those people are a little bit harder to get on their list. I mean, I've called some of those people and just fallen on deaf ears for months on end. And for whatever reason, I've realized that my time isn't necessarily spent on that, but there are newcomers coming into the industry. So while there is a lot of buyers coming to the market, there's also new brokers coming to the market as well. And I have found some success. There's a few in particular that I know of that are looking to connect with buyers. And if they find really good opportunities early on, they don't really know as much like kind of the big players because they're just starting at their career out as well. And that was, I think, a similar scenario here where this particular broker, she had a lot of experience, but for whatever reason, she gave me a chance. And part of it was just we had really good rapport, which I can't really tell someone how that happened. Some of that stuff is a little bit beyond me, but we had great rapport. She and some of these other brokers that we're speaking to are earlier on in their game, and that allows us, I think, to have a little bit more meaningful of a conversation of a shot.
Okay. I think you make a really good point. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah. One of the things I want to jump back to, I mean, so when you guys were going through the databasing process, there was a lot of things that you adapted that were, really, really difficult strategies that you guys were able to pull off. I mean, one of the things that would make the databasing process a lot easier is if counties were to give you a list of all the mobile home parks in the county, which they keep that list at their office. But the biggest problem with that is that a lot of them either don't want to give it to you, or they're, the people that manage those lists, it's usually on paper form, so they got to pull out a big binder and you got to sit there all day and copy it. And I always thought that was one of the interesting adaptations. You guys were really, really good at getting those lists from counties, whereas we'd always tried, and I think we'd only been successful a handful of times. So I always thought that was a really interesting part of what you guys did with the database.
Yeah.
So.
This is Ian. Yeah, that was Ryan's adaptation, and probably comes back to the sales experience of things that he could kind of get things out of people that I personally couldn't as well. But he was the one who got majority of those lists.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, I want to, if you guys, this is like a 10,000 foot view of this first deal. So the broker brought it to you. Just maybe give us like a high level point of view, like what how many lots it was, what you paid for it, and then where was the opportunity? Was it the opportunity in raising rents? Was there an opportunity in doing infill? Was it an operational turnaround? Yeah. Just the general details of it, if you would.
Yeah. So it was a $1.5 million deal, about 89 lots, 57 of those were occupied. So the real opportunity was in the fill up of the spaces. So we are now getting started and kind of doing the cash program and selling off some of those homes to fill that up. It was pretty much at market rent, but with mobile home parks, there was still some room there. And then also too, we had to do, I guess, a pretty good sized capital project. The roads were shot. They just were not well taken care of. So we recently repaved those, but a lot of that had to do with kind of the vacancy, just the vacant paths, filling those up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That large capital improvement on the front of the road, or I guess you just did it recently, so you bought it about a year ago. So 89 Space Park, did you guys repave the entire park, or just sections of it?
It was sections of it, but
it
was a good portion of the park.
Okay. Yeah, that's an expensive project for sure. And that's one of those things, Charles, I always really talk about. Like, you really have to plan for that, like at the stage of acquisition. Like, don't ever get into a park, especially that's got a really bad road. There's lots of parks that have incredibly bad roads in them, and it's a very large capital expense. And it's one of those things we sometimes see, like new park investors that they buy a park, or they're looking to buy a park, and maybe the road repairs are going to cost them $50,000. And they don't have that $50,000, so they're thinking, well, I'll do it over time. I'll do it with cash flow, and that big of a capital expenditure, especially when you're talking like a smaller park, something that's 50 to 100 spaces, it's going to pretty much eat up your cash flow for a long time. That's what your plan was, and you just got to plan for it ahead of time. So this park here, the market lot rents, you guys are bringing the cash program in. How is the cash program going for you? Have you brought any homes in yet through the cash program in this particular park?
Well, we haven't yet, so that should be starting within the next few months. So we haven't experience with that yet.
Got it. And Charles, it's funny. It's amazing how intimate this business is, because I know that park was on our database, and I know that I've actually had, my memory is really awkward. Like I'm really hard with like remembering someone's name, but then again, like I literally remember a conversation, and I'll remember a park just by looking at like an aerial. Like as soon as we figure out which park you guys bought, I literally remembered the aerial the day I looked at it on like Google Earth, and so I can envision what it looks like. I remember talking to that owner. I believe this park, like he owned an apartment complex right next door to it, and he was kind of a sophisticated guy, if I can remember correctly. And and we had a conversation with him. So like it's all about the timing. Charles and I always talk about timing, right? I talked to that guy. I remember probably a couple times. He's in our database. He was in our CRM system, and he was just he wasn't really ready to sell when we talked to him, and he also was, his expectations for price were very high. They were over $2 million at the time when I had chatted with them, which is it didn't work at that price. So, but the timing is everything in this business. Whatever happened in that guy's life, what you guys came into it right time. Maybe he just liked you better than me. I mean, seriously, there's so many different things that could have occurred that you guys got the timing right. You hit him at the right point in time when he was truly ready to execute, and that's why it's so incredibly important to keep consistent and persistent with your follow-up efforts, whether it be cold calling, direct mail, dealing with brokers, whatever it might be, because you got to get the timing right. That you got to find where that gap is and make sure that you're there to fit into it when they're ready to actually get rid of their property. So, Charles, anything else? Go ahead. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, this is Ian. Basically, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's a long-term sales game, and if you view it as anything else, then that's the best way to describe it, right? So, to find deals, I know I talked to a lot of kind of new investors coming into the game who look on LoopNet, like once a week or something like that. But if you really want to like get real success in this industry, it's just a long-term sales game and just persistent follow-up. And there'll be months where you feel like you're not getting anything there, and then all of a sudden you get a random phone call out of the blue. And we've gotten that before too, where they're like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, and there's momentum that you build as well. With those efforts you're putting in, there's momentum that gets built up, and it literally pays you back over time. And so it's really front-loaded efforts, and you got to stay consistent with it. Once you get the front-loaded efforts in, you got to stay consistent, but those front-loaded efforts pay off years and years down the road. Charles,
yeah,
definitely.
Or go ahead.
This is just Brian here. I want to interject with a little anecdote. When I was working at Wells, and I was waiting to jump on the light rail from all the way down in Pineville, North Carolina, down to the heart of downtown Charlotte. I remember this conversation waiting for the train to come with Ian, who had just left his job to do this full time for next to no money. I mean, huge leap of faith, which Ian, I'd love it if you give a little bit more color to that. But I remember Ian having a lot of doubts because we basically just had the one park we were talking about, and out of nowhere, not maybe half hour later, after that phone call, after I kind of motivated him to, hey, kind of talked him off the ledge, so to speak. Boom, phone call from our second park, which was a mailer from several months earlier. She wanted a ridiculous price. We gave her an offer. Didn't hear from her for months. Ian hit her back with a phone call. Then literally not but a couple hours after, I tried my best to re-motivate Ian because it looked grim. She called us out of nowhere, and boom, we're under contract in a really short period of time. And that's happening right now with another lead that we thought was just dead. We met this guy in person. We had lunch with him, and he basically told me, all I have left is my daughter in this mobile home park. And out of nowhere, he texts me and he goes, okay, it's time. And I think there's 2 points that I really want to make here. Number one, you got to keep pushing. If you want it, you have to keep pushing through the slow times because it is completely unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And number two, it is a long, long game. The La Costa Mobile Home Park down here in Lovejoy that we closed on, that was a cold call that Ian made June of 2016. So it took about 12 months from first contact to closing. And that is not abnormal. And it does not follow a predictable trajectory. It is a roller coaster. You just have to, like Ian said at the beginning of the podcast, you have to put in a little effort each day. Consistency and effort will reward you. Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm actually sitting, and I'm in Pennsylvania right now as we record this. We have a parking contract in my hometown, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we've been at this one. My first sit-down meeting with them was July of last year, in-person meeting. And we had it under contract shortly after, and then a sister, it's 3 siblings that basically are running it, or well, one's running it, but 3 make the decision to either sell or keep. And a sister that's not involved at all started throwing wrenches into the equation, and this thing literally has drug out for more than a year. We are in contract. We are literally moving towards a closing date. We're all settled, got all the issues out of the way with the sister, but it's so unpredictable. That thing has been a roller coaster ride, and we literally technically lost it like 2 different times. Because the sister was out shopping it and getting higher offers and like literally going to industry brokers. I mean, she was like doing her best to like just foil all my plans of buying this property. And the persistence aspect is so important, because if I'd have just let it go for an extra like week or 2 or a month, this thing would have been in someone else's hands right now. So you got to keep pushing forward, even when it's tough, even when it's challenging. Got to keep pushing forward. So I want to talk about, and Charles, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things happened. I think the first deal I actively partnered on was 23 months, right around 23 months after I got started with my database. And I kind of experienced a lot of the same things that Ian probably went through. So I definitely get it. It takes however long it takes, and it usually seems to be a year. For a guy jumping into the industry for the first time and really getting started, and from the day you decide to put in that big effort, just mark your calendar a year later. That's probably when it's going to happen for you.
Yep. No, I think that's a good time frame. I mean, even big brokerage shops. I was talking to a gentleman the other day from Cushman & Wakefield. He's just getting his start in that business, and that's one of the big brokerage firms. Any of those big brokerage firms, it's all commission. You come in as like an associate broker, or maybe not even that. I don't know whatever their labels are. But I mean, you got to establish your market, your niche, get your name out there. Like they pretty much tell you, like, expect 12 to 18 months, if not more, before you get a paycheck. If you can't handle that, this is not the right business for you. But if you can handle that, it can be life-changing. So kind of the same thing applies to this or any other type of real estate you're going to get into. I mean, you got to give it a year. It's not going to happen overnight. Forget about the late-night infomercials that say that you can get rich in 60 days. You know what? One of you guys might get really lucky out there and literally just might get the timing right and find a super motivated seller that's going to throw their park your way for next to nothing in 60 days. That might happen, but more than likely, probably give it a year, because these deal cycles can be quite long. So I want to talk to you guys about the importance of strategic partnerships. I know that you guys you partnered on your first deal. I believe that you guys did your second deal on your own, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then your third one, you did another strategic partnership with a larger operator. Just talk to me in general terms. Talk to me about how that strategic partnership, I mean, how it was helpful for you guys. Like, what didn't you have? Like, what couldn't you bring to the table that strategic partner could bring? And, why did you decide to go down that path rather than just doing maybe some smaller deals on your own that you could handle on your own?
So if I could start this is Ryan, and then, again, Ian, I'm going to hand the football off to you. I think there's kind of a Democrat versus Republican type way of looking at business partnerships. And I think there are a lot of great valid points with good data and experience backing up why you should not have a business partner. And the equal but opposite of that, which is lots of reason why you should have a business partner. So Ian and I, we partnered up, and we realized a lot of reasons why we are meant to have a business partnership together and formed our own entity and split everything 50-50. And I think one of the biggest things is we disagree extraordinarily well. We can yell and scream and also be very, very rational, and at the end of the day, be good friends. We also practice radical transparency. I tell him things that my wife is like, why the heck did you tell him that? That's weird. So it's a friendship that's extremely strong, but it's also it's just when times are tough, it's really nice to be able to pick up the phone and have someone to talk to that's going through exactly what you're going through in real time, and you're doing it together. So long as, like I said, probably of a whole slew of reasons why a business partnership for me makes sense and for Ian makes sense is disagreeing well. And then when it comes to strategic partnerships, Ian, why don't you take the ball with this?
Yeah, so I think if we zoom back a little bit, kind of take the 10,000 foot view, you got to first ask yourself, what do you want from this business? So there's a lot of ways you can take this business, right? Are you looking for retirement income? Are you looking for maybe having some money for your kids' college fund? Are you looking to have a 5,000 lot, fund? There's a lot of ways you're trying to go public. You just want to be an active or passive investor. That's something that you kind of have to ask yourself early on. And Ryan and I knew we wanted a large enterprise. So one of the things that we decided to do with some of these partnerships was, if we have an opportunity that's large, why would we pass on that? Let's find every way possible to be a part of that, even if we have to give up some of the upside or give up control or whatever that is. We viewed it as a deal with training wheels. So someone who's an experienced operator, one of the things that we found fascinating with that is they had systems in place that we could then adopt and adapt to our own style, similar to what we did with the deal sourcing strategy that you guys have given to us. Mm-hmm. So we found it really flattened out our learning curve a lot, and we were able to be a part of deals that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to be a part of. One of the things that Ryan and I, our biggest challenge is that we don't have a lot of capital. We don't come from a lot of money. Our family hadn't invested in any of our deals, and our friends haven't as well. So this is just through networking and working with, people who have been interested and who are already in the space. So we viewed it as a deal with the training wheels, mm-hmm. right? And so over time, that would allow us to then do deals on our own. Also, too, it gives us a little bit more reputation and track record. As you know, when you're raising capital, that's extremely important. Being kind of by association, being with people who have had a lot of success, who are well known, it helps us kind of get to where we want to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's great advice. And you mentioned one point there about not having friends and family to go to, and I would tell you that it's actually you guys are probably, there's a little bit of a relief as well, and maybe you don't feel that because you didn't go that route, but I would say that I try to avoid even approaching friends or family, for no other reason than not to intertwine it in the business, right? And we do have some friends and family involved in some of our deals, but I think that you guys took the smart path and just really, you went out and you built your network, because really that network's going to carry way farther than your friends and family would. Now, unless you came from like a super wealthy family that, is worth $50 million, that's a different story. But in a normal sense, your network's going to carry you. It's going to carry you to the touchdown way faster than friends or family would. So. Plus, you don't have
Just
to have.
another-
you don't have to have awkward Thanksgiving dinner table conversations.
That's fair.
Yeah. I
I
interrupted.
guess one of the other things
Go ahead,
I guess one of the other things I'd like to add, when you talk about, obviously there's a few people that get into it just to buy a couple of parks, and then there's a very select few who get into it to build a big business. And one of the things that we've been discussing a lot more now that me and Kevin and Brian we're starting to hit our initial financial goals and the goals for our family, is we're starting to look at what the goals are for our company when we start to look at building a big business. I think that's important when you're in these early stages, to look at what the goals for the company are as far as your social responsibility as a company. So, that's some of the things that we've been looking at now that we're building a big business, because there's a lot of big companies out there in our space too that don't do the best job at their social responsibility as well. And it's one of the things that we've started to put together, and I think it's it's part of the learning curve when you go from being a smaller operator and then looking to be a big operator, is how do you fit in with the industry. So I think that's also an interesting thing to look at when you're looking at your business and growing.
I agree with that. This is Ian. I wanted to add a little bit more color to that, because I've had this conversation with a few of our investors, as well as just mentors and people that we've spoken with. And one of the things that, to give a little bit more color to that is, so if you want to do only a few deals and say you don't have the money to do it, your investment partner should have a similar time horizon as you. So if you're looking for investment money for a retirement income, you should buy a deal that gets you what you need there, right? So, and also too, if you're looking to scale a monster portfolio, it's probably better to centralize your investment partners than to have 35 different investment partners, because if you want to put that all to a fund, then you have 35 different people that you need to renegotiate with to put those properties into a fund if you wanted to go that route. So all those things, and also just your financing options too. So we found a bank that's very eager and looking forward to do mobile home park deals. And so, they just approved a loan for us on a deal that we should be closing next week, in less than 2 weeks. So these types of relationships help us make it much more efficient for us to run our operations. And then later on down the road, maybe we'll package a couple of those parks in a loan and things like that. So starting to think about those things earlier rather than later allows you to be more flexible, which is extremely important in real estate, especially when the market isn't as optimistic as it would be today. You want to have as many options on the table as possible.
Yep, absolutely. And I know, guys, it's really financing can be quite challenging in this business. And would you mind sharing that one bank that you mentioned that you guys are having good success with? Because I think, especially on smaller deals, relationships are everything. It sounds like you've got a little bit of a relationship built with them already, and they understand parks to a certain extent. Would you mind? Sure. Do you guys mind sharing which one that is, or?
Yeah, sure. So it's Integra Bank. It's in Western North Carolina, so they have a pretty small footprint. But they're in Western North Carolina. They're also in kind of the Charlotte region as well in South Carolina. And I think they're expanding to a few other markets as well. But they've been very, very eager to lend with us, and
That's
I've been
great.
very happy with that relationship.
That's great. Well, there you go. Everyone that's listening, if you're in North Carolina, or I guess it sounds like even parts of South Carolina, if you've got a park that you're looking at, and it's funny because we've got a park in South Carolina in Columbia that we've been having a big challenge getting financed. I think we're there now, but Integra is not one of the banks that we had spoken with, and so it's there's so many of these smaller community banks, spread throughout these various states, and it's hard to figure out which ones get it, because 90% of them don't get this business. They don't get it. They don't understand Correct. It. The programs that they're going to give you are going to be just horrible. Really low loan to values, short amortization terms, and they don't really. Most of them just value parks, or they look at parks as like land. They don't even consider that it's got an income stream attached to it, which blows my mind. But it's just that they don't get the business, which is fair enough. Because honestly, 8 years ago, I didn't understand the business either, right? So, okay, well, good deal.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny. We talked about this probably earlier this week with we were on a conference call with some other people, and they were looking at deals. They have a very, when you have a very specific geographical footprint, more like kind of how your guys' business is set up, building those banking relationships can allow you to move really, really fast on deals. Whereas for us, we have our geographical footprint is essentially the eastern half of the United States, and it's just impossible for us to build these banking relationships all over the place. And a lot of times we get the deal under contract, and then we start building the banking relationships, and we're just way behind the power curve. And it creates a lot of inefficiencies in our business. But a lot of the people that we talk with, they've got really a much smaller geographical footprint. They've already got lenders lined up where they've got deals lined up. And it's going to allow them to avoid a lot of the stresses of having to go chase down lenders, especially in this environment where we've got, quantitative tightening at this point, and banks are starting to get a little bit more tight with their money and their terms and everything. So it's definitely a good thing to do.
Yep. So I want to ask you guys, we're getting pretty close to the time here, and two more things I really want to cover before we shut things off for the day is, first one is, what's your long-term strategy? So you guys are still incredibly young. I think, are you both 30 years old? Is that correct?
I'm 30. And I'm 27.
Okay, so 27, 30. So you're still really young guys. Got, many years ahead of you. What's your long-term strategy as far as this business? Do you guys see yourselves building up a large portfolio and exiting out in 10 years and going to sit on a beach somewhere and just drinking Mai Tais all day long, or is this something that you guys intend to build into a large company that can maybe even grow and be passed down through generations through your family? Where do you foresee yourself? And I know things change, but just right now, what are your future plans?
Ryan, you want to go first, and I can follow.
Yeah, so I really have to credit Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek. The book really changed my life because I was dumping so many hours into my sales job. I was doing well with it, but I just realized I like to talk to people, and I really am fascinated at listening to everybody from a CEO to a janitor, where they're at, where they're going, where they came from. And in sales, you get to meet a lot of those folks from top to bottom. And I just realized after hearing enough people what it was that I wanted in my life. And the thing that's probably the most important to me that I heard a lot of people kind of say they regretted was not having time for their family. So specifically missing, a lot of my sales managers said the thing that they regret the most is missing the soccer games and not really having a relationship, and more than just sales, a lot of entrepreneurs too, just missing that time with the family. And that really hit me right in the feels. And so, yeah, it'd be nice to have a private jet and to lay on the beach and drink all sorts of fancy, delicious drinks. But the truth is I don't have kids yet, but I know that that's going to be gut-wrenching if I'm not there for my child, my future child. So that was the biggest motivator for me. And also, and I think, Ian, you'll agree with this part, we're just workers, man. Last night on the park, I worked from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., and the only reason why I went home is because it was getting dark. So I can't take more than 2 or 3 days off without getting that itch to work and do something. So I'm always going to be working. But if I'm in control, then I can dictate when I take off to go spend time with my kids, when I can do what. So ultimately, it's about control and autonomy and designing my own lifestyle. So from that perspective, that's really my dream and my vision. And the mobile home park industry is my medium to get there.
There you go. I love it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
No, go. You're up.
Okay. This is Ian. So I think, Ryan has pretty defined what he wants personally. And for me, in terms of where I see our business going, one thing that we are doing is kind of trying to be flexible in the way that we go for it. So it allows us to kind of go the fund route in the next 12 to 24 months if we need to, or if we would like to, or if it makes sense with the investment market at that point in time. Ideally, I would like a couple thousand pads to control and operate and probably 5,000. I think it's probably a good number that we'll probably shoot for. But we're staying nimble because that may change. And ideally, long term, I'd like to get into some real estate development as well. But that's a long-term goal. Mobile home parks is what I'm going to be doing for at least the next 10 years. Yeah, good deal. Well, I think you spoke to a life-work balancer. I think that's incredibly important, and I'm not sure if either one of you guys have families yet, but I'm like the old guy of our group because I'm the one that has I'm married and have kids. Charles has got a very serious girlfriend, and our other partner Brian does as well. But I'm like at that next stage, I guess. It's as far as the kids and the family life and all that, and that's so very important to me. I can tell you that I've got a lot of people that are in my life that have been around for a long time that are 20 years my senior. That is their regret. Their regret's like I busted my butt for so many years, and I missed kids games, and I missed my son's third birthday or whatever it was, and I just vowed when I married my wife, I vowed that whatever we do, whatever path we go down when we have kids, I promise that will not happen. Like whatever that takes, that will never ever happen. I'll never be the guy that has that regret. I might have other regrets. I don't know what they are yet, but it won't be that I missed out on important things with my family. So I think that's important to really put in perspective. And everyone's got to have a why of why they get into this business, or why they get into any business, or why they go into any venture, any partnership together, and just being very clear about that in the beginning. And it can change over time, but always being very clear and conscious is important, because it's really like it's like your North Star. I mean, like it's the thing that you're following, right? It's why you're doing what you're doing. Charles, I only had one other question I wanted to ask real quick, and I don't know if you have anything else you want to touch on. I know you got to run, so why don't you, Charles, if you have anything else you wanted to chat about, I just want to ask one more question, but you've got to run off the phone here in a few minutes. So go ahead and if there's anything else you want to throw out there, go for it.
Yeah, I'd say as far as when you're scaling a big portfolio, like you guys are getting ready to, sounds like you guys are getting ready to really shoot for being 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 lots, somewhere in that range for the next couple of years. I mean, if I can make a suggestion about, don't be afraid to hire those back office employees even before you can necessarily afford them, because that really assists you with that life work balance and structuring your management company to where you're not sitting there working 100 hours a week and stuff like that. That's definitely really, really important, not to get caught up in the work so much, and to more or less work on your business more than you work in your business, I guess you'd say, as far as a cliche is concerned.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so lastly, guys, what I'd like to ask before we say goodbye to one another is, tons of new investors out there that are interested in this space, that are just, either just listening to this podcast for the first time, or maybe they've heard mobile home parks for the grapevine or great investments, and now they're starting to kind of dig in a little bit, put their heels in the sand. They haven't necessarily gone down the path all the way yet. They haven't hit a lot of the struggles that we're experiencing being operators today. They haven't hit the struggles of being rejected, being told no on the phone, and just all that kind of stuff that happens in order to get us to where we are today, both of us, all of us that are on this call. So what advice would you give to new investors who are looking to break into this business? I mean, what kind of encouraging words of advice would you share with them?
Yeah, Ian, let me go first. This is Ryan. So I really have two bits of advice. First, be wary of artificial barriers to entry, most notably fear. It's just an emotion, and a lot of times your worst worries, even when they come to fruition, aren't that big of a deal. And two, I'd like to kind of semi-quote Frank Underwood from House of Cards. There's a really powerful scene, and I believe it was season 3, when Claire and the vice president were having a conversation, and none of the options on the table looked good. And then Claire basically mentioned that, hey, when times get tough for Frank Underwood, he looks at all of his options, and if he doesn't like what he sees, he creates his own option. And let me give you a quick example of that. When I was in high school, I went to Catholic school, and at the time, I thought I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and I realized I needed to get the practice in. So I went to my principal, and I said, I want to do a stand-up comedy act in front of the whole school. I want to create my own charity event called Stand-Up Comedy for Charity. And he looked at me, and he was, in so many words, like, son, this is a Catholic school. We've never done anything like this before. And I boldly looked at him, and I said, not yet. and I found a way to make it happen. It was not, I went and I organized all of it, and that's just my personality. So my advice is twofold. Number one, if you don't like the options on the table, make your own option.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, be wary of your own emotions. And this is the psych major in me coming out. A lot of your fears are literally just artificial barriers to entry. On our second deal, Cherry Valley, we've made a massive error in our due diligence, and our worst nightmare kind of came to fruition. But as Tim Ferriss, again, and I'll credit him again, what he says in 4 Hour Workweek is sometimes you have to imagine the worst case scenario, and then when you live it, even just in your own imagination, it's not that big of a deal, and you find a way to survive. So those are my two big advices.
No, that's fantastic. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, this is Ian. Basically, what we've learned is you can listen, and this is not to discredit what you guys do, because you guys gave us so much value and so much information. We listened to all your podcasts, and you really got us in this business. But there's only so much information you can consume before you have to go out and make your own mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of whatever you take in, this is not to say to be, financially irresponsible and just go invest before you really know what you're doing. But get out there sooner than you think you probably need to. If you've been listening to information for a year, it's probably time to get started. And also, too, for example, I'll give a little bit detail on what Ryan was saying. And so we made a large due diligence error on our second park that we made. Basically, we have a large water leak that we just totally missed in due diligence, right? And so I just didn't do the calculation correctly for the parks, and so our units are running at like 12,000 gallons a month, which is like three times what they should be, right? And so we're eating like $10,000 a year in terms of water expense. So we had this massive miss in due diligence that was, my fault that I have to take full responsibility for. But we bought it cheap enough that we'll still be able to recover even after replacing these water lines, right? And so I guess the thing here, and we have a very understanding investor, so even though everything didn't go according to plan, a lot of things didn't go according to plan, we're still in a position that we can still buy parks. We're closing on one next week. Sounds like we have another one in talks that we should be putting under contract, but we just keep on moving forward. And everyone's going to take their licks, take their jabs. It's a boxing ring, right? But if you can kind of just continue to come back, continue to stand up, things will usually work out in your favor.
Fantastic. That's awesome, guys. Thank you so much. And Charles, are you still there with us? Oh, Charles had to drop off the phone, so I knew he had to go at 9 o'clock. But guys, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences thus far. Again, you guys are only 2 years into the business, a year since you bought your first park, and you guys are just kicking butt. So just keep doing what you're doing. And for those that are out there that are listening to the show and you want to learn more about Ian and Ryan and their business, you can go to their website, archimedesgroup.com. That's ARCHIMEDESGRP.com. Did I get that right, guys? Was that right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Good deal. And they're both very active on LinkedIn as well. So you can go find them on LinkedIn and again, just read about their business if you want to reach out to them. I know you guys are very, very open guys and you're looking to help others that are, in this business. I know that's a cool thing about this industry. I think you guys have experienced the same thing, is that you put yourself out there. This business is a very friendly business, meaning the other operators, other owner and operators out there. It's not. There's some people that are close vested about things, but for the most part, most people are very open and willing to help, and it's a very tight knit community. I mean, once you get into this business, you start realizing that it's very, very small, and you get to know all the other bigger operators, and most of them are pretty cool people, and just want to help and want to see this industry succeed as a whole. And have you guys felt the same thing being in this business?
Absolutely. I have no reason to be here, Kevin. I have no experience, no money. And 2 years later, we've got about $14 million worth of assets, 700 pads, give or take, and we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
So there are really, like you guys said in your last podcast, there are no excuses.
Yep, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. And, guys, that's all we have for today's episode. But before we hang up and say goodbye, I just want to remind you that free gift that Charles and I give out for those that leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. If you want the cold call script that we use, as you heard here, that Ryan and Ian, they cold call. They literally cold call park owners, and that's how they landed this most recent deal, which is a 500-plus space park. And so if you want the cold call script that we use in our very own business, leave a 5-star review on iTunes. And what you'll have to do to redeem that gift from us is just literally shoot us an email to gift@mobilehomeparkacademy.com. Just tell us who you are and what screen name that you use to leave that review, and we'll send you a copy of the cold call script that we use in our very own business. And you can also go by the Mobile Home Park Academy website at mobilehomeparkacademy.com. You can listen to all the previous podcast shows. I think we're up to like 78 or 79 now. So hours and hours and hours of information about this business. If you're just getting started, maybe you're already a seasoned investor, I'm sure you can find some great information in our previous shows. Also, download a copy of our popular ebook. It's free. It's called the 21 Biggest Mistakes Investors Make When Purchasing Their First Park and How to Avoid Them. And that's a required one. If you're just getting into this business, get in there and read it. It's a simple read. It's very quick. After you're done reading that, go back and listen to all the podcasts, and you'll probably know a good bit by the time you're done with all that, and probably have close enough knowledge to actually go out and start actually looking at deals and buying your first park. So but that's all we have for today, guys. Ryan and Ian, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Appreciate you coming on the show, and you take care and have an awesome week, guys, okay?
Thanks, Kevin.
Congratulations for taking the necessary steps to achieving massive success through the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Be sure to visit our website, mobilehomeparkacademy.com, to download your free digital ebook version of the 21 biggest mistakes investors make when buying their first mobile home park and how you can avoid them. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our free monthly mobile home park investing newsletter, which is jammed full of valuable tips, tricks, and strategies to help you accelerate your path to success as a mobile home park investor. More information about this podcast and its hosts can be found by visiting mobilehomeparkacademy.com.